You've found your way to the Winning Tactics podcast with host Adam Sinkus. Adam discusses winning tactics with small business owners and entrepreneurs, uncovering processes and introducing the tools and solutions for enhancing the bottom line. Thanks again for finding your way to the Winning Tactics podcast, and now your host, Adam Sinkus.
All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to our usual Tuesday installment. On today, June 9th, I looked at my calendar on the bottom of my computer only to figure that out because, gosh darn it, I don't leave the house anymore. I am excited to have with me, though, Brandon Turner. Brandon Turner is a process expert, and he is going to drop some knowledge on what we should be doing in small business around processes. It's going to be some super awesome information. We're going to dive into the 80-20 rule, delegation, and why and what you should be delegating. Brandon, first and foremost, welcome to the show. Excited to have you on. Tell our audience a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Thank you for having me. First of all, excited to be here. My name is Brandon Turner. I own a company called Procedure Sheets. We document processes and procedures for small businesses. So we take video and audio recordings of your process and transcribe them into written recipes that anyone can follow. And I currently live in Oklahoma. I moved here about 12 years ago from my home state of Georgia, and I've had entrepreneurship in my blood ever since. So that's me.
Awesome. Absolutely love it. That is a really, really cool process to take video and audio of processes and just meld them into something that's repeatable. I think repeatable processes is something that's so important for businesses and something that a lot of small businesses miss on because they have the guy that's been doing this forever and knows how to do it really well.
Yes. Or the gal. Yes.
Or the gal. Yep. The gal, the guy, the person. Sales processes, I think, are the biggest, in my experience, one of the biggest offenders of this, because you have that salesperson that's been with your company for 10 or 15 years and they're just good at sales, right? And
yes.
So
don't you dare cross them.
Exactly. The only challenge I found with those people is that sometimes they're a bit protective of their processes as well. But once you get them to understand, it's for the greater good of the company, trying to help everybody out so we all win together. Usually can cross those barriers. But let's dive into it. First and foremost, one of the big things you talk about is the 80-20 rule. So tell us a little bit about the 80-20 rule. What is it and why is it important?
The 80-20 rule explains how 80% of your results will come from 20% of your efforts in general. So if you think about this from the standpoint of the customers or the clients that you serve, maybe you're in a situation where most of your clients or your customers are the ones that require a little bit more work. Maybe they give you a little bit more headache. Maybe they're a little more stressful. They ask for more things more often. They ask you to stretch yourself more often or customize a solution to them when in areas where you may not do that, step outside of your lane a little bit. Well, what if you have maybe 20% of your clients or customers that are your the ideal people that you want to work with? It's always a smooth transition. They understand your processes. They understand how you serve. They understand how you can get them from point A to point B. And it's just a smoother transition. These are the people that you wake up wanting to serve. Well, the 80-20 rule challenges you to flip this on its head. What if 80% of your customers were like those 20%? What if you were, it takes a little bit of bravery, but what if you made the choice to say, all right, maybe we don't want to deal with this type of client so much anymore, or this type of customer. You do have the authority, and it does take some courage, but you do have the authority to fire your clients or customers so that you can serve the people that you are meant to serve. And of course, the 80-20 rule can apply in other aspects of the business as well. It really just depends on what you're challenged with and really what keeps you up at night.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. I think it's interesting you talk about 80% in the customer aspect of it, right? And firing customers. Last week I had Patty Mara on and we talked about relationship sales, and that's one of the things that she had mentioned was was talking about those customers that are a challenge. And so I'm with you. If they're too much of a headache, if you can afford to take the hit in revenues for a short period of time while you replace them, I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
But I think that's an important caveat to call out is you have to be in a position to do that. Not all businesses are in a position to fire those difficult clients.
That's fair. Absolutely. And when you think about it, you may have that situation with clients or customers, or you may have that situation with something you do internally. Maybe one of the things that you do regularly is you update your website, just as a random example. If 80% of your time is spent on that, then what kind of results is that producing for your business? It could be, especially in this pandemic environment. Imagine if the situation is, hey, we need to go to curbside pickup or curbside assistance. What does that look like? When we've been doing it one way for so long, what's it mean to make that switch? So those are the types of things that you can think about, where what's the 20% that can get us 80% of the results that we want in whatever area.
Yeah, no, I absolutely like that too. I think we spend a lot of time on processes that are repeatable, that are automatable, and so it's the cost. The cost of time is a lot more expensive than I think most people realize. At least in my experience, I know I went through a period of time where I thought time was cheap, and now I realized I have assigned a value for my time, and so that helps it keep it in my mind of, if I spend an hour on this, it costs me this much money.
Well done, sir. Yes. Yes, that's how you do it. Way to go.
So, and maybe that number is a little more inflated than where it should be. But if I was charging somebody for that time, that's what I would charge them for that time. So that's how I base that. So,
yeah.
But I think it's interesting you talk about that. Automation is something that everybody fights, right? And they're like, automation is taking away jobs, taking away positions. I tend to believe absolutely 100% the opposite of that. I think automation is forcing us to be a more skilled workforce that is more impactful. And so what are your thoughts from a process standpoint about automation in those, especially those repeatable tasks that you're doing this kind of the same monotonous thing every day?
Well, one of the big challenges and one of the big arguments in terms of automation's role is, obviously, as you touched on, it can take away the perception that it takes away jobs. It takes away the human element and the ability to connect, things of that nature. So as an example, in our business, when somebody orders our service, we have an automated process that to get them onboarded. So for example, there is a video that you will watch that will say, hey, here are the next steps. Whereas I could have a person actually do that. But again, I have to think about that person's 80-20 rule. Is this the most effective use of their time when they could be maybe waiting on the other side of this video to serve the customer and have that hands-on experience? We also have an automated system where part of our automation is that when the customer orders our service, we know what type of project we're doing for them, what type of how long the engagement is going to be, obviously their contact information. That's not information where we necessarily want to have to get on the phone with every individual person and say, okay, would you mind sharing us your first name, last name, what's your business name, all of this. We have automated tools that make that happen. I think that automation has its place to enhance the human experience without removing it. There's some places where it's a fit and other places where it may not be a fit. So as I mentioned, in our onboarding, automation has its role, but we're waiting for you on the other side once you get through our automated onboarding, because then we're ready to have that human experience and get you from point A to point B.
Yeah, and to your point, that turns that once you get to that point of the human experience, it makes it much more effective, because now you're jumping right into the task at hand instead of spending half an hour of your time, their time, gathering all of this nominal information.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think that leads into really our next piece here, which is delegation. Because automation is one way to take some tasks off your plate.
Yes.
But delegation is another way to take some of those important tasks off your plate. So let's jump into the why of delegation. Why should we be delegating out tasks instead of trying to own and do everything?
So there's an element to this that I wanted to start with that's a little unusual, and that has to do with your ability to connect with people, trust people, and bring people into your team. Obviously, your business is your baby. Your process for how you serve people is your baby, or maybe the product you create. You have to be thinking about things like, can I really trust this person? Can I trust somebody else to do what I do, get the results that I get? This forces you to step out and bring somebody into the fold to help grow your domain and to give you an opportunity to grow yourself, be your most productive self, while they go on and do some of the duties that maybe it's not best for you to do. They could have a strength in an area that's a weakness for you. It could be that they're a little bit more efficient, or it could be that if you know your process and you share it with them, they can follow it just the same. Just make sure that they get the same results. So that component is an important part of delegation. The other part is that you have the same 24 hours in a day as everyone else. You're only going to be able to wear so many hats before you get burned out. And then who are you really doing a disservice to? If you're burned out, of course, that does you a disservice. If you're burned out, there's a little bit less of you to share with your family, your kids. There's a little bit less of you to maybe be able to go on that vacation or engage in this hobby. There's maybe a little bit less of you to offer to your team members in terms of guidance, support, leadership, things of this nature, because you're running around all the time, and there's no end to the cycle. And delegation is how you can get some of that time back. You had just talked about placing a value, even a dollar value, on an hour of your time. That's the kind of stuff that you can be thinking about, because you're there to be your most productive self. And as the leader of your organization, whether you're in management or a key team member or the owner, these are the types of things that delegation can help solve.
Yeah, no, for sure. So there's a couple things that you called out, and I want to dive into those a little bit further. So the first thing I want to dive into is trust, right? Because I think that's a huge piece of delegation. I am a doer myself, so usually when it comes down to delegating tasks out, I get a little. If I don't have that trust, I will typically just take it on myself, because I know what I'll get out of myself.
Yes. Right. Yes.
So let's talk about the trust piece a little bit, because I think it's a really important stepping stone to delegation. So how do you help people overcome that trust barrier so that they can start delegating?
I had an engagement with a client in 2018. They were a digital marketing agency, and this was a deep, long engagement. They had lost their account manager, the sole account manager who handled all of the accounts. And when this person left, that knowledge left with them. So now the only other person in the company who had that knowledge was the owner. So when I came in, of course, the goal was to document their systems and everything. So we're in an 8-hour training class on a Friday. I've got one other person with me. This is one of the new hires, and we're on an 8-hour training class on a Friday. And the owner is just talking about this is our company history. This is what we do. This is who we serve. All of these types of things that you hear. And normally when you're an employee, of course, you're listening for your roles and responsibilities. You want to learn what your schedule is and who you're going to be working with, all of these things. But as a process person, what I was thinking was, okay, here's a procedure here. Here's a process right here. This is how they serve clients with this. This is how they serve clients with that. I'm hearing all this stuff, and I'm trying to capture it as it's escaping his head. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where this is part of what will lay the foundation to establishing trust, is communicating how you serve your customers and clients, how you do things internally. What does your day-to-day look like? If you can communicate that to somebody else, that's one of the first areas where trust can be established. Because like, oh, I know your process for this. I can hear your recipe for this. The next level of that is to understand, well, what are the results of this? Why do we do this in a certain way? So let's say if you take on a lot of tasks yourself, you have a certain way that you do things. You need to be able to communicate to your team member or whomever, or your new hire, okay, this is why I do this, because it gets this result, it gets X result. If you can get X result by doing this, then this is how we need to do this. The other component to that, I would say, is what's the experience level of the team member or the new hire that you're bringing on. So in my own personal situation, we brought on a procedure writer, and I had to learn the hard way that I can't just bring in anyone off the street, to just start writing procedures for customers, because there's a format that you follow. There's specific information that a procedure needs, things that need to be communicated to an end user, like the next person that will be doing this. And then I learned the hard way by going through someone who didn't have any background versus meeting somebody who did. One of our writers right now, she has 30 years of experience. It's like, okay, that's perfect. I can just show her our process and then she can take it over. That was a test of trust for me. It's like, do you have the experience in the background to be able to deal with the nuances of this type of process, of this level of service? So it was communicating what our process was and knowing that they had the background to effectively get the results, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that really leads into the second piece that I wanted to talk about, which is how do you find people? How do you approach finding people that fit into the gaps that exist in your head? So, if you mentioned you were working with a digital marketing company, and so some of the gaps that, like, I'm an operations guy. I know how to make the projects flow. I know how to, how to do all that. And I dabble in Photoshop and all that stuff, right? But I know for a fact that is a gap in my knowledge. So how can businesses be more effective in bringing that person in with the right experience, as opposed to just going out and finding somebody? How do you approach that?
So I'm going to preface by saying that all of our team members are 1099 contractors. We do not have W-2 employees. And of course, this can lead to a separate conversation about establishing culture. But I bring that up to say we had to, or I had to think about, well, what's the result that we're trying to get for someone? The result that we're trying to get for our customers is we're trying to give them their time back. That's what we sell. I talk about the process documentation and flow charts, things like this that we do. But at the end of the day, our goal is to give you extra hours of time in your week or your day or your month. So one of the things that I had to do was like, who has experience in documenting processes? I had to think about, what's their personality like, what drives them, what are some of their goals? And this is kind of getting a little bit deeper into the emotional intelligence component. But I had to think about, is this the type of person that is easy to work with? Are they usually a one-person show? Do they prefer to work alone? Are they comfortable with speaking directly to customers or clients? Should they have a question? This was something that, of course, you can go out to a job board, or you can go out to some social media sites to actually find the talent. But it's actually the screening process I found that helps you filter through who's going to best serve the mission, the purpose, and the values of the company, and actually serve the customer or the client. So you may ask certain questions about their personality. It's like, hey, what would you do in this situation? Or how do you feel about this certain thing? And then, of course, you have a separate interview about their skill level and their experience, right? Mm-hmm. But that component about their personality is just as important, it seems. I don't know if that quite answers your question, but those are the kinds of things.
It definitely answers my question. I love that you talk about personality, because personality is part of the culture, and the culture is ultimately what's going to drive success in your business.
Yes.
So, it's being short-sighted on culture can actually end up hurting you, because your team is doing different things, different ways, different approaches. The morale may be up or down. Lots of fluctuation based on inconsistent culture. So I love that you kind of start with that culture piece. That's a hugely important and beneficial practice to go through. I've worked with the humble, hungry, and smart philosophy with
Yes.
people.
Yeah.
Absolutely love the premise of that. I've looked at some of their interview guides, and they are monster guides that are way too long for any one single interview. But the premise of people should be humble, they should be hungry to grow, learn, and succeed in their position, and smart
Yes.
in what you're hiring them for is what that's built around. So, and it leads
Absolutely.
right into exactly what you were talking about there.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And buy-in too. I
mhm.
think that's because I think about, of course, when you're building teams, of course, you have experience working with teams and training and management opportunities and being able to shore those things up. And of course, having buy-in is another part of it too. So even though, like, for example, with us, you may be the person who writes the procedures, but you still need to know why we do this for people. Like, what role do you play in the bigger picture? So that's one of the things that I lead with too. It's like,
Yep.
hey, we're helping people get their time back. This means, oh my gosh, maybe their kids can finally see them. Maybe their spouse gets to sleep with them instead of the dog. Maybe they get to finally go on a vacation. It's these little things that are actually massive things in our lives. So,
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. That's the why of the position that you're putting them in, and so if you can find somebody that is all in on the why I'm doing this, it helps build everything else. At least in my experience. Uh,
yeah.
so let's shift gears a little bit from this. Still talking about why delegation is important, but I want to shift gears a little bit to the mindset of what I know versus what I think I know versus what I don't know, and how that plays into delegation.
Right. Yes. I feel like you have to kind of go on you're going on a little bit of journey. In some cases, it's an act of faith because when you make the decision that you're going to delegate, first of all, you know what goes into that. Making the decision that you're going to delegate means, okay, I'm going to trust somebody else with my baby. Okay, that's massive. That's not something to overlook, and that's not something that I should introduce as a fleeting remark. That's a big, big, massive decision for a lot of people. So once you make the decision, okay, I'm willing to delegate. How do I go find this person? In a lot of cases, you have to step out on an act of faith and go get your hands dirty. We can obviously there's the beauty of living in the information age. We can go to the public library and check out a book on anything that we want. We can get online and watch YouTube videos or listen to podcasts, or we can read articles or do research and find anything we want about this is how you find the perfect person, and this is where you look for them. But at the end of the day, you still have to take the action. So, as an example, I started procedure sheets by delegating to somebody. I needed a virtual assistant to help offload a couple of my tasks, and I had spoken to some friends of mine in networking groups and some entrepreneurs that I knew. So I ended up going to Facebook to actually find somebody because I was told that you don't have to just go to the job boards like you typically would. You can even go to Facebook to find people. And of course that raises questions like, what does that even look like? So for me, it was a situation where I had when I started the company, I was working full time and I had a side hustle. It was a separate business, and I was overwhelmed. I was wearing all the hats, all of this. Well, in my business, I was trying to get some of that time back so I could be more effective and move things to a new level, but I just didn't know how. Like I was in that owner's trap, where you own a job instead of a
Mhm.
business. So, and this will tie into your question in just a moment. But in my job, at my full-time job, we had this checklist that we went through every day, and it was a checklist of our daily activities. So, and we'd have to review it like quality control kind of thing. So, I would perform a task, someone would review it, and then they'd initial on the checklist. Someone else performs a task, I review it, and then I initial on the checklist. So, after months of this, I realized, oh my gosh, what if I had a checklist for my business? Because that way, if I hire help, they can do what I do the same way that I do it and get the same results. It's like, okay, cool. By this time, I had been asking people, how do you hire people? Where do you find people? Like, do I need an employee? Can I get a contractor? this is when somebody let me know about Facebook. So I took my checklist that I made for my business, went into a Facebook group full of people that were looking for remote work opportunities for entrepreneurs. This could be for brick and mortar businesses that they worked for, or an online company. But this was a Facebook group full of people looking for remote work opportunities. I joined the group, learned about the group, listened to conversations. I dropped a post that says, hey, I've got this job. It's this. Here's my little checklist, all this kind of stuff. And from there, I was able to mine a team member to help me move things forward and offload some things to them. What that experience taught me was that you can't just dive in there and do that. So because first of all, there was an issue with the pay. I had to negotiate pay myself, which is something that I wasn't taught how to do. I wasn't taught how to pay other people and what that needed to look like. So I learned how to negotiate pay from situations like that. You also have to learn, again, the personality aspect. What's their personality like? Do they have buy-in? Is this something that do they want to have creative freedom in their role? Or is it just a straight technical thing? Hey, just give me the boom, 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 and I'll just do my job. Those are the types of questions that started coming up. So this kind of speaks to to your question about, not knowing what you don't know. It's like, I didn't know that I need to figure out what I'm going to pay them, how often I pay them. Is it a fixed price? Is it commission? All this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that came with more experience in hiring new people. And that goes back to, well, I hired somebody who had no experience writing procedures to write procedures. That only went so far. So I was like, okay, so let me do this a different way this time. And this is messing with my trust issues, right? So now I'm thinking, do I even trust myself to do this? It's like, I've got it this way and it works this way, but I can't get this person to do it. But if I get this person with experience, are they going to change it up? All of this stuff. So it became a trial and error thing. If you want to save time, yes, you should do some research, but not to the point where you have analysis paralysis. You got to get out there. And like I say, with getting your hands dirty, the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And then you'll start learning, if I want to hire help, are they going to be in office or are they going to work remote? If I want to hire help, they're going to be remote? Are they going to be US based or are they going to be foreign? If I want to hire somebody, am I paying them on a commission or a fixed price, or what does that look like? You will learn the questions to ask yourself before you go out and reach for that person. You know what I mean?
Yep. No, I agree wholeheartedly. I think you should have at least a core understanding of, even if you don't know how to do that specific job, you should have a core understanding of what that job looks like as you walk into it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh my gosh, yes.
It's like I liken it to this because this is totally relatable. It's like hiring a graphic designer, but having no concept of what good graphic design is versus bad graphic design.
Yes. Yes.
So that's those things, and that's a very black and white. You know what bad pictures versus good pictures look like.
Right.
Right. But what makes a good picture versus what makes a bad picture, and what questions to ask to get somebody to understand whether somebody else understands that is the key. And so that goes back to that. I like to be informed,
right?
But I don't need to know.
Right. That's perfect. Well stated. I had that experience. I'm not afraid to admit that I did that with our logo. In the early days, I made a logo in Microsoft Word or something. I can't remember what it was, and tried it out for a little while, and it didn't quite resonate. I finally got with the designer and they made a logo because, like you said, I don't understand the fact that there's a psychological component to how we respond to logos. Right. I'm not even thinking about that. I don't know to know that stuff. So I get a professional on it, and the logo's like, oh, okay. Now I get it. It's like, okay, good. Let me leave this to the pros.
So, I think that's a big piece of the why on delegation, why it's important. You could have spent 20, 30 hours working on a logo and probably eventually got to that point where a logo designer maybe spends 4 or 5 hours on a logo.
Yes.
And so the time and the effort that it takes you to pay them for the 4 or 5 hours worth of work versus you spending 30 hours of your work, of work to figure it all out, then do
Yes.
it, and then hope that it's right, and then find out that it's not right and go back and fix it.
Right.
It just becomes a long, drawn out process. So that's always been, at least in my opinion, the why of delegation is really been the I just don't want to spend time on something that I have to figure out when I know I can pass it to somebody that is just going to do it right the first time.
That's fair. Absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly, especially since what you're highlighting is another thing that I didn't think to bring up, was that you have to make a decision. It's like, is it more important to have the time than it is to part with the money? Because for in a lot of cases, like, it's like, I'm not going to part with my money. It's like, I'm going to do this myself and take this over. But it's like, well, what's more important? Is it the time or the money? So it's that kind of thing too.
Which conveniently leads into our last topic of the day. What should you be
I like it. Yes.
What should you be working on, right? So this is talking about how are we consciously making that decision on what tasks I should delegate versus what tasks I should be holding on to.
Right. So for this, I would like to suggest an exercise. And this is something that you can do weekly or daily, depending on how much is on your plate. So the goal here is to decide, what should I do? What should I delegate? And what should I do away with? So you're going to have a to-do list. You'll have a to delegate list, and you'll have a to do away with list. So to understand what those things are, you have to go through an exercise. So whenever you're faced with, whenever you have a task that you need to complete, whatever your process is, you want to ask yourself 3 questions. The first question you want to ask is, will I enjoy doing this? That can be a major factor in the difference that we can make in our businesses, for our teams, for our customers. Are we in the place that we want to be in, that fulfills us in the business? That could be a major thing. And your answer, yes or no, will determine your next course of action. So let's say, for example, I'm going to go back to the COVID-19 example. Of the businesses that were able to stay in business, they had to convert to curbside pickup, delivery only, takeout only, all of these types of things. So will I enjoy walking out to the customer's car to take their order, or walking out to the customer's car to deliver their order? That kind of question. Mm-hmm. If the answer to that is no, the second question you'll want to ask is this income generating? And this can apply to any activity. So if you ask yourself, if you're faced with a task, you ask yourself, will I enjoy this? And your answer is no. Your second question should be, is this income generating? Why that matters, we should all know, because we can't truly serve without the lifeblood of our business, which is sales, income, cash flow. So is this going to be an income generating activity? If so, and I'm good at it, and this is where I need to be, then yes, I need to get out there to the customers' cars and talk to them, or whatever that looks like. Or yes, I need to make this change to the website because this will help people place their online orders. Or yes, I need to get on this webinar with these existing clients because this will help them move to the next level in our journey with them, that kind of thing. So let's say the answer to the question, is this income generating, is no. The third and final question you ask is this an obligation? Does this have to happen in order to move this relationship with this vendor forward, move this relationship with this client forward, move the chains on this sticking point in our business that we haven't been able to get past? You'll find that once you run all of your business activities through that filter, will I enjoy this? Is it income generating? Is it an obligation? That will help you build your 3 lists: your to-do list, your to delegate list, and your to do away with list. And I would recommend it as a weekly practice at a minimum. It's new, it's unusual, it's going to pull you outside of your comfort zone, and it's going to challenge you. But that's part of the mindset shift, because at the end of the day, you want to get your time back. You want to be productive instead of busy, or maybe you're trying to overcome that trust issue you have with delegating, that kind of thing. So this is the type of exercise that kind of gets you in that practice of making that happen. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. It is 100% something that I think you should be doing more often than not. I do a similar exercise myself, not quite the same way, but I approach it as I make a list of everything that I think I should be doing. Yeah. And then I start by crossing off the items that I know I shouldn't be doing.
Oh yeah, it's a huge hit to the ego. I'll tell you that. Yeah.
So a little less calculated than your method, but the same. It's to approach the same outcome of what should I be working on? What's not my problem? What should I not be worried about? Taking things off my plate. That's been my MO for 2020, is taking things off my plate. So
that's good. Yes.
But I think another thing we should talk about in this, and we touched on a little bit earlier on, is automation and how automation has a role in delegation and what tasks you should be working on. And so, my mindset has always been, if it's something that I do every single day that doesn't bring any direct ROI to it,
right,
I should be finding a way to automate that.
Yes, absolutely. So an example could be, let's say that you have a service-based business, and in order to perform a project for a client, you need information from them, information about I guess what their goal is. It could be information about the scope of the project. That information could be in the form of, here's the company's name, here's their goal, here are the key players that are involved. It could be information like that. Maybe you need a way to capture that information without having to physically visit their business and take notes from everybody, or maybe without having to get on a phone call with them every time to gather this information. Maybe without having to have an administrative assistant have to call them up or visit or get on a video call and gather this information. What if you had a form that they could fill out that captured all of that data? Say maybe it's a Google form, or maybe you have some type of software that they can fill in a form, and that data automatically gets pulled into the project, so that all of that data is there, so that you can just move on and start with the project. It could look like that. So to get into the specifics, a tool, for example, that you may look at is something that's called Zapier, or I think it's called Zapier. It's Zapier. And for those unfamiliar, Zapier is a cloud-based platform. It basically lets your softwares talk to each other. It lets you automate tasks. So let's say you've got software for, it's like your CRM software, your customer database, and maybe you have software for your email database, so that you can send emails out to customers. Zapier can make them talk to each other if they don't talk to each other already. That way you've got stuff going on behind the scenes, that administrative task you don't have to think about anymore, because that automation is there. That's an example. Of course, we use Zapier as well. And sales and marketing can be its own separate podcast, actually, its own separate conversation. But one of the ways that I was able to start scaling our business was, in the beginning, I would physically go into a business and provide a consultation with them. And the way that it worked is that I noticed that there was a pattern in how our consultations went. Clients, regardless of industry, would ask certain questions. We would go over certain things. They would mention certain challenges. My goal going in was to document their systems. But of course, this opens doors for conversations like, man, we're really struggling with this, or we'd love to get over this hump, or this key person is this, or there's this going on. And I started noticing a pattern. And once I noticed a pattern, I was like, okay, so this is typically how a consultation will go. We'll go over these questions, we'll go over these goals, these challenges that are in front of them. What if I could create a page on our website that walked us through that entire process? What questions I need to ask you, what you need to ask me, all of those. So those were the types of things that I was thinking. I was like, this eliminates the need to have the hour and 30 minutes pulling you aside at your office, or you're coming to my office and it's an hour and 30 minutes. You can just do this online, or we can get on a call and we can just run through this page we have on our website, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Also, if you are able to, again, of the businesses that survived this, maybe you're in a situation where you need to convert to online ordering for a period of time and you don't have a mechanism to do that. There's several tools out there that will allow you to create online ordering systems. If you are a retail business, you can use Shopify.com to create an online store. If you are familiar with what are called sales funnels, which are basically they're systems that walk people through an educational process or an application process or a sales process. You can build one of those, and people can run through those. But you can get back untold hours of time by thinking about these types of automations. Is there a tool out there that will help us automate this specific process, or that will automate this specific sequence that we go through? Those types of questions are really important.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. One of the big ones that I've experienced in the past is things like sales reporting and if financial reporting and things like that. And though you can't fully automate the accounting process, so to speak, you can at least automate the reporting that comes out of that, so that you're not spending 20 minutes downloading the report every morning. It just shows up in your inbox, and
yes,
and you can look at it, or you can go to your software and go look at the dashboards. A big proponent of simplifying and streamlining those types of connections within your business as well, and just taking some of those menial, I just need to download a report, out of the mix. So
yes. Absolutely. And it can actually lead into things that we don't think about. Like, so many of us, part of the lifeblood of our business is getting reviews from existing or past customers so that future customers can see, or future clients can see. And well, how do you get reviews? I mean, if somebody may not take the time to do one because they forget, or life happens, or whatever, do you have a system for getting reviews consistently? And how do you do that? Are they sending you a postcard, or are they mailing a postcard to your office, or can they get on Google and leave you a Google review on your listing or on your Facebook page? You can create a process for that, and that's something that can be automated too. So it's those kinds of things.
Yep. Even if you're on the like, for me, I still love the aspect of physical mail, because I think the effort that you put into physical mail shows people that you really legitimately care about them, whether it be a handwritten card, even if it comes as a pre-printed card that you just signed or have a digital signature for. With some of the services out there, receiving a physical piece of mail from a company that you've done business with, or a person you've done business with, can be very, very meaningful, because it takes more effort than sending an email. And
so true.
But there's tools and people that can automate that for you as well. So
yes, absolutely, yes.
So absolutely love it. The thing here, I think, in my mind, one of the big takeaways from today is that we need to understand, what are we putting effort into that we shouldn't be putting effort into? And then once we determine what that is, how we get it off our plate.
Absolutely. And I think it seems like a lot of this, I mean, because we talk about, of course, this is winning tactics, but for some of us, the tactics are one thing, but it's that psychological component, the spiritual, emotional component. That is a really big part of it too. I really can't emphasize that enough, because we can learn the strategies and the tactics, but if we can't trust ourselves to move the needle and take that next step, that can be really one of the most difficult parts of it. So once you get over that, I kind of feel like the strategies and tactics become the easy part, it seems. Not to belittle it for anybody, but I mean, once you get past, like, I'm willing to trust somebody else to do this, let's go.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head with the big thing that a lot of people get in that roadblock is the trust aspect of it. So overcoming that is, it's the age old, the first step is admitting you have a problem.
Yes, that's a better way to put it. I like it.
I know I have a problem. I need to own everything.
Yes, exactly. Yes. It makes me feel like we're in a room. It's like, hey, my name is Brandon. Hey, Brandon, I got this issue. That's good. Yeah.
So we are getting towards the end of time. So I'd love to hear one last thought. What is that one thing that everybody should really wholeheartedly take away from today's discussion?
Make the decision about whether you want to own a job or own a business. Because if you are wearing too many hats and you don't have enough time left in the day, and you just don't have time for a vacation, or maybe you can't get your team on the same page, it could be because you own a job instead of a business. Businesses are run by systems and systems are run by people. And whether you're people first or system first, either way, you have an opportunity to serve many, many more on a much deeper level if you make that decision. Do I want to own a job or do I want to own a business? And making that transition, there's all kinds of guidance and there's all kinds of support for that, but you have to make the decision first that you want to make that transition.
Absolutely love it. Couldn't have said it any better myself. Most importantly, where can people find you?
Yes, so our website is buymytimeback.co, buy like purchase, buymytimeback.co. We have some tools and resources actually to about the exercises that I talked about with doing it and delegating it and doing away with it. We have some resources that you can use that you can physically see and actually do the exercises on. And then of course you can learn more about me. You can learn a little bit about my story and our story, some of the people we serve, learn about our Done For You service, all that fun stuff.
Fantastic. Aside from that, people can find you on LinkedIn, I'm assuming, as well.
Yes, you can do a search for Brandon Turner, or you can go to linkedin.com/in/produce more, work less.
All right. Fantastic. So I will link you in the comments as well so that you can just click on his name. And I threw your website in there as well. As always, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your knowledge. Gave some really, really solid gems on how to really get more time back by focusing on what's important and what's going to grow your business and getting rid of the stuff that is just going to kind of lay there and take your time and
Right.
maybe not provide the value, or the opportunity cost becomes very high. So
yes, it does.
So absolutely love everything you brought to the table today. Some great information for small businesses, big businesses. Really, this applies to businesses of any size, and really, whether you're a leader, an individual contributor, it doesn't matter. This is something you can take to work, to home, to anywhere.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
So I appreciate it. Go ahead and find him. I dropped the links to his website and you can click on his name in the comments and go to his LinkedIn page. More importantly, I shouldn't say more importantly. Importantly, don't forget to swing by my page. If you absolutely like or love the content that I put out every week for you, I would appreciate your support. It does take a little bit of time, effort, and a few dollars in cash to make this all happen for you a couple times a week. Patreon.com/Adam Sinkus. You can go ahead and support the show. Would love your support. Every penny goes back into making this show a success. I appreciate everybody's time. Have a wonderful week. We will be back on Thursday, 1 p.m. with the one and only Jordan Paris to talk about podcasts and how they can be important to your business. Have a great afternoon.
See you guys. Thank you.